What's the difference between the Papa John's website and Harry Kim?
What?
Papa John's website has promotions.
Shut up, Wesley.
Welcome to The Final Frontier, a Trek-Sphere production. Your fun, fantastic stop for all fan film things. And I ran out of F words there. Sorry about that. Joining us today is our fearless leader and son of the great man himself, our Apollo, Adam Mullen. Back from my stint with the A-Team, I am Starbuck, a.k.a. Bill Allen. Oh, hello. And our special guest today, the man, the myth, the legend, Bill Boxler, a.k.a. Boxy.
Hey, in his own mind. Good morning.
Good morning. So, yeah, Adam was telling me that since you're Bill and I'm Bill and he doesn't want to get stuck doing doctor for the whole show, you said you'd be, your nickname is Boxy, and that's what you'd go by.
That's correct.
All righty. Well, in honor of you, we had a Battlestar Galactica opening.
Or we could just call Adam Bill and then just Bill.
There we go. Do we have some news?
Star Trek Discovery airs, or I guess by the time this goes live, it just aired. The second half of season 1 has begun.
Are we looking forward to it?
Well, I am looking forward to it. I think everybody else has decided they hate it.
I enjoy it.
It's a lot of fun. My only fear is it's going to turn out the fans were right about some of their theories, and that's going to just crush my spirits so much. Because the only thing worse than the Star Trek fans who hate the new show are the Star Trek fans who will spend the next 5 years, told you so.
Yeah.
All right, I'll bow out of this right now. So,
Are you an I told you so, or are you a I hate the show fan?
I don't hate the show. I absolutely don't. I'm just not a big fan of it right now. I just, as I hate to say it, when Next Generation came out, I wasn't a fan of Next Generation. I think it takes them a little while to find the characters, to find the voice of the show, and I'm not sure that I agree with everything they're doing with this one. And I mean, but in the same vein, I hate to quote Shatner, but it's just a television show.
Yeah. The one thing that bugged me the most about the premiere, and it started to bug me about a lot of shows, because it isn't just Star Trek, I noticed, did this. It takes 3 episodes to get to the plot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I figured 2-hour pilot would set up the premise. The 2-hour pilot was a prequel, and then episode 3 sets up the premise. I mean, that's just, and it isn't just Star Trek doing that. I've seen other shows that are starting to do that thing where you need to watch more than just a 2-hour premiere episode to know what the story's going to be about, and that's just driving me nuts. It's like, okay, because you're going to do this big serialized story, you still set it up in the first 2 hours. Don't take 4 hours so that people know what's going on to decide whether they like it. Just do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, and I hate to say it, a lot of people complained about Star Trek Enterprise when they tried doing the episodic television with like the whole Xindi plot.
Yeah.
And I see Discovery doing the same exact thing that Star Trek Enterprise did.
My biggest gripe with Enterprise was it did the things a prequel should never do that just made things wrong. It spent too much time focusing on stuff from other series instead of blazing its own trail. If they had left out the Borg and the Ferengi and that horrible how did Klingons go from ridged heads to flat heads? If they had left that out and all the other TNG fan service episodes, it would have been better.
I think, though, at that point in time, they were too far in to try and find their own voice. They knew that they were toast.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they were grabbing at straws, anything they could find to try and saved the series.
Yeah, and
And I mean, some of the stuff I actually did like. I mean, I liked the whole, Klingon augment piece. I did not like the Borg bit. I thought that was just ridiculous. Um, you know, there there are there are parts of Enterprise that I thought made absolute sense for them to pull out. I loved the Mirror Universe episode.
Mm-hmm.
I love that they did that. I thought that was really kind of cool. Um, but when Enterprise came out, I also do feel that at that point you had Star Trek fatigue, which is a lot of people said it was just too much.
Yeah. And it's like Star Trek Enterprise was kind of ahead of its time because 10 years after the show first aired, it's when it became a very popular. Everybody says, I really like this show. I wish they hadn't pulled it off the air.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then you should have watched it then, shouldn't you?
Shall we move on to the question of the week?
Yes, please.
So this is Khan's home away from home. Which planet was Khan and his people taken to? Was it A, Ceti Alpha 6, B, Ceti Alpha 8, C, Ceti Alpha 5, or D, Ceti Alpha? So we'll come back to this at the end. Hopefully it's not too easy. Hopefully it's not too difficult.
If only I had this thing that I could look up answers just on the fly.
Yeah.
I don't know what it would be, but I wish someone would invent it.
No cheating.
I probably should look them up more often because half the time I'll sit there, hey, remember that episode when Picard met that dude on that planet that had that thing on his head and that thing happened to him? And it's not quite that vague, but there's a lot of that guy from that place in there. It's like this dude who couldn't really speak and was talking in metaphor.
Well, so are you saying my question is too vague?
No, your question is, well, the answer is 42. So your question is just wrong.
Well, I thought everyone's
No,
seen The Wrath of Khan.
Yes, and it's like this question I know because it's in the trailer that shows up when they show this on TV.
Wait, now which timeline are we talking about though?
Well, this is the original, the Prime timeline.
Okay, see, you got to state that up front.
Yeah.
Oh. I apologize. This is the Prime timeline. We're not in the Kelvin universe. I apologize. So, shall we move on to the interview?
Yes, we should.
Yes. All right. How did you get into Star Trek?
Oh, I have no clue. I was born 2 years before Star Trek debuted. I remember vaguely in the 70s when the reruns were on, beginning to catch the reruns, and literally just being a fan of it and just enjoying watching the original series. Um, neither one of my parents were into science fiction or anything like that, and I always kind of gravitated towards science fiction, and I think I probably just sat down and watched one of the reruns on one of the local channels, and that's kind of how I ended up getting into watching Star Trek. I was hooked from that point forward. I was also the geek in elementary school who somehow at one of the department stores they had a Captain Kirk tunic, and I decided that I wanted that Captain Kirk tunic, so my mother bought it for me, and I wore it to school one day and got thoroughly ridiculed for it, and then stuffed it in the back of my closet, never to be seen again. When the motion picture came out, going to and I joke about this. This was my level of kind of commitment to it, but I just started collecting a lot of the comic books, a lot of the toys and stuff like that. And when the motion picture came out, I was in high school, and I decided I was going to a Halloween party. And I was waiting for a friend. I think I was like 16 at the time. I was waiting for a friend of mine to come pick me up, to go to this Halloween party, and I had decided I was going to go as Captain Kirk from the motion picture. So I've got the white tunic, and I've got, the whole outfit set up. I've got this phaser on my side, this communicator on my wrist, whole 9 yards, and I'm waiting for him to come pick me up. And my mother happened to be looking out into our backyard, and she saw somebody breaking into our neighbor's house. She went and got my father, and my father and I started going back towards the backyard where this person was trying to illegally enter the house behind us. And my father walks out into our backyard, gets to the middle of our backyard, and yells out to this guy, "Hey, you, wait a minute, I want to talk to you." Guy jumps off a ladder that he was on, goes running down the street. Well, being the fact that, I've got my Captain Kirk outfit on, I decided to chase him down the street in this Captain Kirk outfit. And at one point I pulled the phaser off my belt, and I'm like, what the heck am I doing? I just kind of threw it over my shoulder and stopped. I walked back to the house, and the police were already there. The cop looks at me. He's like, "Who do you think you are chasing the burglar like this?"
You should have gone for it, dude. I mean, that would have been.
I'm sure the neighbors were looking, going, "Oh boy, what is this, kid doing now?"
No, you'd have been famous. It's like Burglary Stopped by Captain Kirk lookalike. And the final picture would have been you standing there in your uniform holding the phaser, and like the burglar being hauled off in chains, and it's like that would have made the news.
Yeah, I'd have been a national celebrity. I could have rode that for at least a couple of years, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've always been, I've always been into Star Trek. I also I had a great opportunity, and I like telling this story just because it shows kind of the individual. But when the motion picture came out, George Takei was on a promotional tour for a book that he had written called Mirror Friend, Mirror Foe. And I went to see him at a local mall, and I'm standing in line. After he speaks, he talks about, they had a mock-up of the bridge and the Enterprise, and after he speaks, they're going to have this big, thing where everyone can go get stuff signed. Well, I, of course, being the geek that I was, had this stack of stuff that I wanted him to sign. So I go and I get in line, and he was a perfect gentleman the entire time, signed everything that I had asked him for. I had my tech manual and had him sign the tech manual. I had him sign some other stuff. And afterwards, I'm standing just to the side of him as the next people are coming over, and I'm just in awe because, here is, this guy from Star Trek that, I had just, I had loved Star Trek so much, and I got to meet him. Wow, this was just a great experience. And there happens to be another gentleman standing next to me, and he looks at me and goes, "Hey, do you know anything about this Star Trek stuff?" And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I know everything about this Star Trek stuff. I'm a big fan." So I start going off on this guy, on this. He says, "Well, hang on." He says, "I work for the local paper." He says, "I have to do an interview with this guy. I don't know anything about Star Trek. Would you mind coming with me to do the interview?" Oh, now you've got me. Okay, yeah, I'm going to go do this. So, we wait until he's done signing everything, and then they escort us back into the main office in the mall. And they usher us into this other room where we could sit down, and he lets me talk to him for 2 hours. And I'm grilling him about stuff, "Oh yeah, hey, I heard that, in the motion picture, the dome above you is supposed to actually have the Enterprise, but it's supposed to be in relation to how it is on the Earth." And he's like, he's just kind of like looking at me. He's like, "Okay, most people don't know that, and okay, yeah, this is." So I get to talk to him, and finally the guy who's doing the interview, he's just sitting there the whole time, letting me talk. And finally he goes, "Well, I've got to wrap this up." I'm like, "Okay, well, this is wonderful. Thank you ever for doing this." And this guy had a tape recorder with him, and he's like, "Would you mind, by the way, doing some promotional stuff for some of the radio stations around here. So he's doing all this, this is George Takei of the Starship Enterprise, promotional pieces. And I left them all, and I was on cloud nine. I'm like, wow, this was so cool. I got to sit in there and talk with him for 2 hours about Star Trek. I get home, I get up the next day, and I'm going to school. I'm in high school, and I wrote a column for our school newspaper. And I get this idea after school. I get this idea that, wow, I really wish that I would have had him do a commercial for me for my column in the school newspaper. And I'm like, oh, well, hey, that's life. I didn't get a chance to do it. And, how would I have gotten it anyways? So I ride the bus home, and I get home, and I'm like, well, you know what? He's supposed to be at the mall again today. I wonder if I can get to the mall. And I asked my mom, and my mom didn't have a car, and she's like, well, I can't get you there. There's nothing we can do. I said, well, you know what? I got a tape recorder, and that tape recorder has this little thing that you stick on the phone where you can record a phone conversation. And I get this bright idea. You know what? I'm going to call the mall, and I'm going to ask them if I can talk to him, and maybe he'll talk to me. So I call the mall, and I get this woman at the mall office on the phone, and I say, hey, I'd like to talk to George Takei, please. And she's, well, who's calling? I said, well, it's Bill Boxler. Okay, hang on. And I'm sitting on hold. I'm like, he's never going to answer. I know this is not going to happen. Lo and behold, he comes on the phone. And he says, Bill, how are you? Did you get home okay last night? I'm like, well, yeah, I got home fine, and I'm stunned that he got on the phone, and I'm even more stunned that he remembers our conversation from the night before. And I explained to him how I've got this column, that I write for the school newspaper, and would he do a promo for the newspaper? And he's like, oh yeah, I'm happy to do it. So he got this promo on cassette tape now of, this is George Takei of the Starship Enterprise. When I beam into town, I pick up a copy of the Searchlight and read Bill Boxler's column.
That's awesome.
So call him and let's get him doing commercials for the podcast.
Honestly, I'd love to do that, but I really I'd like to just say, Mr. Takei, could you please say, who are you? What are you doing on my lawn? I'm calling the police.
So that's how I got into Star Trek.
So what's your favorite fan film?
You know what? I can't pick just one. I really can't. I only got into fan films a couple of years ago. I really didn't even know that there was this kind of genre out there outside of just some individuals that I happen to be friends with who have done, 8mm stuff when they were kids. And then I got a couple of years ago, when the whole crowdfunding thing started becoming a big thing. There's a gentleman by the name of Mark Zickery who was shopping around on the crowdfunding site, Kickstarter, this idea that he was going to do this new series called Space Command. And he was looking for people to back him. And I liked what I saw, what he was doing. And I decided I was going to be one of the backers on it. But as I'm looking at it, he listed in his credits that he had actually directed a fan film with the guys at New Voyages, Phase 2. And I'm like, oh, well, that's kind of cool. I didn't know that was out there. So I started to look that up, and I started to watch James Crowley and that group doing their fan films. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. I love the fact that they're doing this. And oh, hey, look at that. They're in New York. That's really close to me. So I really, really, really like the Star Trek New Voyages and the Phase 2 group. After that, I found, obviously, Star Trek Continues. Those guys just knocked it out of the park for me. I absolutely loved what they were doing. Really, really enjoyed a lot of the work there. And then I've kind of been bouncing around on all other ones. I've helped fund the Star Trek Renegades, which then just became Renegades once the fan stuff happened.
Mm-hmm.
I did Star Trek Prelude to Axanar and Axanar. Loved that. Loved Horizon. I really just I enjoy all of them. I can't pick one specific and say I like this one over this one or this is my favorite because I like all of the different incarnations. I like seeing what the fans are doing with them and kind of just I love all of it. I think it's all really really great stuff and enjoy watching it.
Have you been in any fan productions?
I have not. I'm doing one right now. I'm doing a radio drama called Star Trek Unity. This is the first, kind of foray into that. Um, I don't think I would want to do any kind of video because if I were to do that, I would have to be the old Shatner with the pot belly kind of Star Trek films. Because that's kind of where I fit in now. We don't
Time to
have
break out that old Halloween costume again.
yeah, I don't think the Halloween costume will fit. So, it's kind of like in my 20s, I could have done, the original series Scotty. Now I'm going into more motion picture stuff. Um, but the radio drama is fun. I'm enjoying doing that. It's something I never thought I would do, but I'm excited to be part of it.
So, other Bill, just so you know, he's talking about my thing. I call the Unity. He calls it a radio drama. He's right. I call it an audio drama. I'm right. But first, Bill, can you tell us who you're playing?
Am I allowed to?
You know, whatever you
I'm trying to
say.
be as kind of, cagey here since
Yeah.
it hasn't debuted yet.
Yeah, you gotta tell us. You gotta tell us.
Well,
We've done a couple of these, and it's always, yes, I'm doing this, and I'm going to tell you nothing about it. Tell me something, man. Come
that's because
on.
if if they say anything more, then I know where they live. So
But that's
that.
yeah, that's the problem. He'll kill me in the next episode.
Yes. Eaten
I'll
by a
kill you off.
denobulent sand
I don't
shark
want to
because you
time
gave
this
an
yet.
interview.
I am playing the captain of the USS Unity, who is Quentin Swafford.
How does that character relate back to Deep Space Nine?
One of the neat things that I like about what Adam is doing with this is there's a lot of neat little Easter eggs hidden in what he's written back to other series.
To answer
Great.
the question, Captain Quentin Swafford, he's from the episode. Well, we don't see him, but he's mentioned in the episode Far Beyond the Stars that First Bill actually had just talked about, and he's the best friend of Captain Sisko.
And what is cool to that kind of connection there is the writer for that episode was the gentleman that I talked about earlier that is doing Space Command.
Very cool. All right. How about you give us a little Captain Swafford? Give the crew some orders. Let's hear your captain voice.
My captain voice is just my voice. I mean, if you want, I can I can change up the voice if you'd like.
Well, I mean, just it's like.
My kids always get a kick out of when I do the Elmo voice. Hi.
Oh my god!
So what are we doing now? Are we having fun?
Okay, say make it so as Elmo.
Make it so. Fire phasers.
Why didn't you audition like that for that part? Oh man.
Well, see, I actually wanted to get the role, not turn it into a parody. So.
Oh, well, I think we're going to have to do a parody.
Yeah,
You're going
that's
to
what
send
I'll bet,
Mr. Jingles on dangerous away missions and give him orders over the con.
Hello? Is anybody there? Wake up!
So, first, Bill, do you have any plans to do your own fan production?
No.
Well, let's say if you did, what would it be? Do you know?
If I wanted to do my own fan production, um, I really don't. I have no desire to do my own. It's easier to do other people's.
Hmm.
Um, I would love to. I loved. I don't want to give. Well, he did just release it. Vance Majors. I just saw his. Was it No Reward?
Without uh-oh. I'm sorry,
The
Vance. I just forgot
Without
the
reward.
name. Yeah, without
Yeah,
reward.
Without Reward. Yeah. I love the crossovers. From the different universes. I like that kind of that kind of stuff, and I'd love to see us do. I'd love to see some fans do more crossover stuff. I could do Batman 66 meets Star Trek.
We started out this podcast just kind of idly riffing a little bit about Discovery, and I know in the pre-interview stuff you said part of what you wanted to talk about was how Star Trek is headed into a more dark and gritty direction. So, what is it? Is that one of the things you said there were some things you didn't like? Is that one of the things you didn't like, or I mean, do you want Star Trek to stick to its more family-friendly, G-rated roots?
I have no problem with going, darker in some of the Star Trek stuff. The and again, your podcast is family friendly, so I'll just say the language. Um, Everyone talks about how it's you know Star Trek is going to be R-rated now. Tarantino's coming in to do Star Trek 4, and boy, Discovery drops the big bomb, big F words, and I felt that with Discovery they're trying to force too much of it. Like when they did the episode where they did use the language, um, I didn't feel the need for it. I thought that it was absolutely out of place. It was, oh, we're just doing this because, hey, we're on a streaming service and we can. Um, I would much rather see Star Trek stick to family friendly. You can do grittier storylines without doing R-rated language. It's I've got two kids. I've got a 5-year-old and I've got an 11-year-old. And I'm not going to let them watch Discovery because of some of the language. I don't, they're dropping that. I don't want to worry about, what's coming next. What are they going to try and do next? I think Star Trek has always been the the basis of what makes Star Trek special and what makes Star Trek work is the stories. It's about stories. It's about the social commentary, and you don't need to use language in order to do that. You can have grittier. You can have darker without going down that road. And that's one of the problems that I've got. I mean, I'm extremely nervous about the idea of Tarantino doing Star Trek 4 because from what I've read, he's come out and said, "Oh yeah, we're going to have an R rating on this." Well, that's not what Star Trek is about. Star Trek is about the more utopian society, the fact that we've bettered ourselves. We don't, I don't need to see blood and guts. I don't need to see, you know, um, have all of this language thrown at me.
Yeah.
I absolutely don't need that. I liked the fact that Star Trek is something that I can sit down and watch with my kids.
Yeah, I got the same vibe off of. I mean, I wasn't offended by the use of language because I am a foul mouth, you know what, myself. Um, but yeah, the way they did it in Discovery, I mean, a couple more dams or hells wouldn't bother me.
Hmm.
Maybe the occasional SOB. Um, But that entire little 10-second clip, I really got the feeling that they did that intentionally for shock value to stir up buzz, because even before the series came out, when they dropped the hint, oh, by the way, yes, guess what we can do now? We can do this. And then this is the episode I think they were talking about when they said that, when they're just dropping a couple of F-bombs. I mean, I could see an awkward character like Tilly just blurting out an expletive like that at an inappropriate time, because it fits her personality a little bit to be over exuberant and yet still awkward and inappropriate. But at the same time, they did it just for the sake of stirring up online buzz about the show, and in that regard, they were successful. When Tarantino does his, I get the feeling it's not so much for the language he wants to do it. He's going to be very, very mean to a lot of red shirts in very unique ways. And I kind of want to see that. I mean, yeah, Star Trek should be family friendly, but let's face it, half the time we do tune in to see what's going to happen to Ensign Smith.
Is there ever a place for grittier Trek that uses the mature language and the sexually explicit images?
That's.
Well,
that's.
go with
I
a
don't know.
specific example if it'll help. The final episode of the first half of Discovery's season. Did you watch that one?
No, I've made it. I don't know how many episodes. I've got like 4 episodes I have to watch.
Oh,
But
okay.
you can go ahead and say, you can go ahead and talk about whatever you want with it. I don't care. The jury's still out if I'm going to finish watching it.
There's a scene where they've rescued Ash. What, Lieutenant Ash Tyler?
Yeah, Ash Tyler.
They've rescued Ash Tyler from a Klingon POW ship, and he's got some PTSD. And then they capture
Laurel.
what's her face, Laurel.
Yeah.
And she's on the Federation brig now. And when he sees her, he has this twisted PTSD flashback involving, and it's just really brief images. It's maybe 5 seconds of footage, but it's just flashes of being tortured, being abused, being probed, and then there are some slightly sexually explicit images of him and Laurel. She was using him as her plaything in more than just a torture capacity, and it's the briefest of scenes, but it relates directly to his PTSD. People are speculating that's what it is. He went through hell, and it's just flashes of that hell, and it's pretty shocking, but it's not pornographic. It does sell the point. Is that the kind of gritty Trek that would work for you, or is that still pushing bounds a little too far?
I think it's pushing bounds. It's one of these. A friend of mine and myself had a conversation once about the difference between Marvel movies and DC movies. DC going very, very dark, very gritty. Marvel being more, kind of lighthearted. The problem with taking Trek down that road is then I, as a parent, I'm going to look at that and I'm going to say, well, geez, I have to go watch everything before I can let my kid watch it. If I can't trust the fact that they're not going to put explicit images in there. That they're not going to put graphic scenes of torture in there. It's I look back at some of the other tracks and some of even the treaded Star Wars. You can do so much more with music cues, with just sounds, that you don't have to have all of this visual stuff and in your face kind of visual stuff to explore those kind of concepts. I mean, you think of like Empire Strikes Back, how much how much more did we get out of it when you see, Han Solo heading towards something and then cut to outside the room and you just hear screams. Without seeing the episode, it's hard for me to say that, would I approve, would I not approve? If you're telling me that there's scenes, even though it's the briefest of scenes, of him involved with her, and I just, I don't know, it starts to make me feel a little uncomfortable, and unfortunately, as in a grander scheme, though, I guess as a society, we're beginning to accept more and more of that. You see more people pushing the boundaries on television in terms of what they allow on television. Carlin's 7 words you can't say on television. How many of them can you say now?
Yeah.
And do I think Trek needs to push that envelope? No, I don't. I think that there's enough other people out there, and I think Trek maybe needs to stay true to the original kind of concept that it had.
All right. Another example from an episode you've already seen, when they explore Discovery's sister ship, and you have the people who died in the Philadelphia experiment type accident, and you saw the corpses that had been spiraled up. Does that also fall in the pushing the boundaries category for you, or if they stuck to occasionally something like that, would that still be okay?
Occasionally, okay, I can see it. I don't think that I don't think it needs to be as in your face. I was watching again that episode we were watching with my wife and I were watching with another couple, and we're looking at this and we're going, wow, okay, yeah, I can't show the kids this. This will give my 5-year-old nightmares. I can let my 5-year-old watch the original series, and not worry about images like that being in his face.
See, and that's the interesting thing, because when you think back to the original series, one of the earliest episodes they did was with the salt vampire, the creature from planet M113, and by 1960 standards, that particular beastie was creepier than things you would see on the Twilight Zone, and the Twilight Zone was dark. And here's Star Trek, second episode, third episode in, and it's giving you a monster. This isn't just an alien. This is a monster. And in the 1960s, I don't know if, it's like it's always kind of had some of it. It's just when we look at what was considered dark in the 60s, it's not dark anymore. Is it possible that in 10 years, even you will have a slight shift in what you consider the baseline for what's acceptable?
I think it's absolutely possible. Hindsight is 2020. I can always look back and say, oh, here's this thing that scared the living daylights out of me. Wrath of Khan, watching the eel come out of Chekhov's ear. Oh, wow. Oh, that's gross. Kind of deal. Now I look at it and go, oh, that's a giant cardboard cutout, and that's somebody's hand, and
Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely see that, but I'm worried because, and again, a lot of what I look at this as now, and if I was in my 20s and I watched Discovery, would I have a different reaction to what I'm seeing? Probably. But I'm not. Unfortunately, I'm in my 50s, and I have kids. I have little kids that I'm looking at, going, wow, if this is what I'm seeing now, where's this going to go in 10 years, in 20 years? Now with the development of things like the VR technology and stuff like that, 10 years from now, are my kids going to be, have a headset on, walking around, looking at all the dead bodies on the Enterprise? At what point do we say, you know what, enough is enough? We're doing this for just the sake of doing it.
Would a Trek that went by 1960 standards thrive today on a television or streaming service?
I don't know. I guess if the stories were good, then I think it would absolutely survive. And I mean, I hate to say it, look at the success of a lot of the fan films. Take it back to the fan films. I mean, it's absolutely, there are a lot of very very good fan films out there that almost have the 60s feel.
They're successful among truck fans, but would they be successful among the casual truck fan or everyday viewer nowadays? Does that make sense? Is it because they're successful because we enjoy them because we like old Trek? But would they actually, be successful among a general population?
If the general population, I think, was exposed to it and the stories were strong stories, I believe so.
So CBS must believe that a grittier Trek can sell better than what was, on in the 60s and even in the 90s. So then why is it that Discovery is so much grittier, darker, and has the language?
I think it's about what will play,
Mm-hmm.
what they can get the most exposure out of.
Mm-hmm.
It's, oh, look what we can do, because they promote themselves as being, um, being out there with it. I think the um, the success of uh, Deadpool, with an R-rated, comic book movie that did so well, has kind of changed up a lot of stuff. A lot of people are going, oh, well, we can now use all the language we want, and we can show all the gore we want. And is it? They're trying to. They're kind of setting the stage. They're the ones who CBS is saying, oh, you know what? We can use this to our advantage by saying, oh, yes, we're producing this, this R-rated Star Trek, because we own the rights to it, and because
Mm-hmm.
we can do it, not because it's what we should do. It's just that we can do it, and we can use that to our advantage to promote it by saying to everyone, "Oh, look what we're doing."
I think it comes down to the dollar sign. They can make more money with an R-rated Trek. It doesn't necessarily mean that it should be R-rated. Uh, and I guess that goes back to, would it be as successful if it wasn't R-rated? Would it be as competitive with other shows that are, of similar rating? Uh, they're trying to. Well, what would be some shows that are trying to compete with that are similar? Can we think of any?
R-rated Trek, you mean, or just
Yeah.
Trek in general?
Well, it's other shows that compete with Discovery, like that are currently on.
Um,
I can't think of
Well,
anything. I
well,
guess.
CBS doesn't have much of a streaming channel, so it's hard
Mhm.
to.
I'm trying to think of other. Well, when I think of other streaming services, um, Stranger Things comes to mind.
Yeah.
It's a sci-fi streaming show that, or Black Mirror comes to
Hmm.
mind. So I mean, but it's hard to say it's like directly competing because it's not like, well, they're both on at the same time. You can only watch one. The format's changing to the point where it doesn't really matter what time a show is on. You can watch it whenever you want, which
Hmm.
alters the 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 whole method of competition because it's not a race. It's not a pick a team. Most people can jump on both now. So I'm
Hmm.
not sure if you
So
can
I
stack it up next to something.
I think it comes down to what which subscription do you want? Do you want the CBS All Access or do you want Netflix? A lot of people have Netflix, and CBS All Access is pretty new. It comes down to that money amount. And I know, Bill, or other Bill, you said that CBS All Access doesn't have a whole lot to it right now for original streaming shows, but that's why they got Star Trek on there, because they wanted it to lead the way for this new service, so people would go, oh yeah, I want that, I want to sign up for that. So again, I think it comes back to the money. How much money can they make?
Well, and the part that I guess I would, by taking it in this grittier, this kind of arena, the language, what have you, the piece that I think that they've kind of forgotten about is not necessarily just the streaming service access, but there are all sorts of ancillary revenue streams that I think what they're doing is they're going to cut off. I mean, I was watching a thing on Netflix that was talking about toys, the toys that made us.
Mm-hmm.
And the very first episode is talking about Star Wars and the Star Wars toys, and how, Star Wars has made, $7 billion from the movies, the theatrical release of the movies, but it's made $14 billion from the toys. If you start taking Star Trek down in a grittier, arena, I'm not buying my kid the Star Trek action figure or the Star Trek toy phaser game or any of that. You've lost any of that revenue, and I think that's partially where they're going to go wrong at.
Maybe Star Trek should take a cue from Star Wars.
Well, plus, I mean, I hate to say it, I think CBS also really, kind of. I'm a firm believer that with the giant fan film issues that happened, that CBS really, if CBS wanted to really jumpstart its streaming service, it should have jump-started its streaming service. It could have used Discovery, but it should have also pulled the fan films into the fold.
Oh, absolutely.
I think they missed the mark on this. What they should have done is said, you know what, we're going to go out to all of those fan films, all those people who are making the fan films, good, bad, indifferent, whatever. We're going to say, okay, here's the quality we want. If you meet this criteria, then we want to put it on our streaming service.
Hmm.
We'll let you do it.
Absolutely.
We don't care. We don't care. Star Trek continues. You keep making them. Star Trek Phase 2, you keep making them. Alec Peters, Axanar, you keep making that. You make it to a certain, this is where we're going to be. And the only thing we're going to tell you is you're going to give us the fan films. We're going to put it on our streaming service. We're going to make the money off of it.
I remember back in the day when cable and satellite were neck and neck competing for the market and trying to throw things at the customer. One of the things that was when on-demand viewing suddenly became a thing. This was like 10, 15 years ago. And you'd have commercials on where it said, thousands of programs available. And this was a brand new kind of thing. And you go tune in and you could flip through. And I swear to God, one of Comcast's offerings was a 5-minute video. This counted as one of the programs of their thousands of programs. It was a 5-minute video, or maybe a 3-minute video, how to properly fold a fitted sheet. So, yeah, I would have loved to have seen them come up with like a subcategory on the menu. Oh, by the way, here's some filler. It's fan stuff. You bracket it first with the documentary Trekkies or Trekkies 2. And then these documentaries are about the fans. Let's see what the fans are up to. And then you start showing all the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I would have loved to have seen that. And it's possible down the road they may still do that. I got my fingers crossed they may still do that, because when you see some of the things they've done towards fans, it isn't showing their films on All Access, but they gave that New York one, James Cawley, they gave him a license. He's a museum. He's a tourist trap now, and he's
Mm-hmm.
like sanctioned by CBS. He's licensed. He's legit. He's got that fun make your own fan film weekend thing going down. So they support the fan films, the new movies. I didn't recognize the guys, but I've read the little trivia bits. A couple of people from a couple of fan films have walk-on cameos in the new films. It's like that's the guy who played whoever in such and such fan film. Oh, he's in the turbo lift. He's coming out as Spock is going in. Stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't really. They're not trying to crush fan films, and I have hopes that they'll realize that they don't have to keep their distance. That they could. But the problem is, and this is the scary thing. It's part of what undid the the film that got undone is when fan films start thinking too much of themselves and put too much importance on them rather than and that was, I think, a lot of what caught when people start saying things like it's better than the garbage they've got on their service. That's, yeah, CBS is not going to support you if you say that.
Oh, absolutely.
So does Grittier Trek have a place among fan films?
At that, I would actually say amongst the fan films, I think that's where maybe Grittier Track belongs. Fan films are, you know, I'm not as concerned about my kids watching a grittier fan film as I am, the actual movies, the actual television series. Um, I can see fan films trying to get grittier with what they're doing. Um, but again, I think that there are definitely some lines that you have to be aware of. You
Mm-hmm.
have to look at. We try and the whole idea behind Star Trek is the utopian future. To take it to the opposite extreme, it's kind of like, do we really need to do that? Don't we have enough don't we have enough Blade Runners out there that Alien, that we can, if you like that kind of science fiction, you can go watch that kind of science fiction, and Star Trek has always been known for being the much more positive spin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I am one of those guys who I kind of like it when they show the ugly side of the Federation, because the big issue with that utopian future is the big issue I have anyway, and it's something that gets reflected in the attitudes of how a lot of fans talk about it. Is it's kind of a very kind of creepy utopia, because even among the fans, it's like, oh, the Federation is perfect. If you question the Federation, if you doubt, if you disagree with something they've done, then you're evil, and that's a disturbing. But they've got this nice shiny polish on it, where everything is perfect and everything is wonderful. But when you have a society like that, it is stagnant and complacent, and that complacency turns into a kind of totalitarian. Do not ever question the state. Do not ever question anyone, because this is how it is and this is perfect. And to say that something's not quite right is heresy, is evil. And it's an idea that, because I mean, part of Star Trek is, yes, it's a vision of a utopian future, but the point of it is that the message it was trying to get out is we can be better than what we are.
Hmm.
If you get to a point where you don't think you need to be improved, you're not going to get better, and you just try to go to some pretty extreme lengths to maintain a status quo that might not be as great as it could be, because it's already perfect and you can't change perfection.
And I think that's where the storytelling comes in. It doesn't, I would love to see them do a series based on Section 31. This idea that there is this idea that there is a rogue group inside that is trying to undermine things that are going on. I have no problem with them exploring some of the underbelly of what is going on, saying the Federation is not perfect. There are problems, there are issues, and that they need to be addressed. I don't think you need to do that by I don't think you need to be dropping F-bombs and having things come out of people's stomachs in order to tell those kinds of stories, though.
So in the the guidelines, guideline number 7 to be specific, for fan films, it says videos must not include profanity or nudity. But then we have in Discovery, we have exactly that. We have profanity, such as the F-bomb, and then we have what other Bill was saying earlier about with Lieutenant Tyler and Laurel, how there is brief nudity. How
and
can
we're talking
they?
super brief, like blink
Yeah,
and you miss it brief.
yeah. But so then, why do they get to do that? But yet then they say fan films cannot have that. What's your opinion on that?
I guess once again, I look at it and I say it's CBS saying do what we say, not what we do. If you're going to hold yourself to one standard, then you really should be holding everyone in the community to the same standard.
Mm-hmm.
And I
I'm
think that it's kind of that's their way of separating their track from everybody else's. Now, I do see their point. I mean, I don't think they want to have someone, creating all sorts of fan films where,
We get to see Kirk negotiating with the hot alien leader.
yeah,
That's why that boils down to exactly why they're avoiding. They want you to avoid that because when I think of it, it's like no nudity, no profanity. They don't want people to go out and make a bunch of Star Trek pornos about Captain Kirk boldly going where no man has gone before and calling it a fan film and kind of screwing up the demographic.
yeah. I mean, I think they understand that at that point you're really messing with the IP.
and it specifically says no pornography. So there you go. I'm not trying to say that this guideline is bad or good. I just yeah, I just think it's interesting that they they get to do what they want, but then they had this guideline, which came out before Discovery, but I find it interesting that there's that kind of dissonance between the two.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of I think some of the guidelines are good that they came out with. Some are just ridiculous. You know, they I really wish that what they would have done is they would have said, hey, here's here's the Bible for writing the or doing a Star Trek film. You can say, hey, we don't want to have profanity in there. We don't want to, we're not saying you have to. Married couples on the Enterprise don't have to sleep in twin beds. They can share the same beds. You just can't show what goes on. Um, and I think they really needed to say, um, and we're going to adhere to the same level of quality and the same kind of guidelines as on some of these.
Shall we get to Bill's rapid fire questions? Or I'm sorry, Bill's lightning round. We call it two different things. I'm sorry, other Bill.
Yeah, we don't have a catchphrase and we don't have proper names for our show segments. We're just winging it.
Okay.
All right, I'm sure you've seen things like this before, so you know how it goes. I ask the questions and you just kind of pop out the answer. I try to make them relate to what we've talked to in the show, so that'll help.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Hopefully no right or wrong answers. Do I have a little buzzer here? I got to buzz in or something?
The only wrong answer is saying Janeway is the greatest captain of all time. And I'm sure next week somebody will say that. But
Gotta go.
I kid. No, the only wrong answer is saying Harry Kim deserves a promotion.
Oh, man. And that was at the top of the show.
Yeah. All right. Are you ready?
Sure.
Who's better, Kirk or Picard?
Cisco.
Who was better at swearing, Kirk in The Voyage Home or Data in Generations?
Kirk of the Voyage Home.
If you had to chase down a burglar today, which Star Trek character would you dress as?
Worf.
All right. Since your nickname is Boxy, who's better, Starbuck or Apollo?
Starbuck.
And who'd make the better Muppet captain, Elmo or Kermit?
Definitely Elmo.
Really? Okay.
To boldly go where no Muppet has gone before.
I like how Elmo sounds almost like Picard.
He did drop his voice a little there. Tried to give him a little British accent, too.
Yeah, I liked it. All right, so let us go back to the question of the week. You ready?
All right.
Okay, so this was Khan's home away from home. Which planet was Khan and his people taken to? A. Ceti Alpha 6, B. Ceti Alpha 8, C. Ceti Alpha 5, or D. Ceti Alpha? What do you think first, Bill?
Is that me?
Yeah,
I'm
first
I'm
Bill.
first, Bill? All right.
Yeah.
I'll go with City Alpha 5.
Okay, other Bill, how about you?
Ceti Alpha 5.
Yep, you're right. Ceti Alpha 5.
That's actually like in the commercial, in the trailer for it. It's the scene where Khan is shouting at Chekhov, "This is Ceti Alpha 5."
Mm-hmm.
City Alpha 6 exploded 6 months after we were left here.
Exactly. And that was my bonus answer, or my bonus question. Which Ceti Alpha planet exploded? And yeah, you're right, Ceti Alpha 6. So I guess my questions are just too easy. I gotta come up with some really difficult ones.
You've had very difficult ones. This is you were just in a Khan kind of mood.
Yeah, I was. I wanted
Yours is the superior trivia question.
I wanted to customize it to first Bill, but I didn't really know how to do that. So I was in a Khan kind of mood, and I wanted some Star Trek too.
I enjoyed Wrath of Khan. Probably one of my favorite Star Trek movies from the original series.
Yeah.
Although my wife she looks at me and shakes her head sometimes because I'll be like, I liked Star Trek the motion picture. Looking back at it, I enjoyed it. I liked, Star Trek 5. I liked, little sections of it. I like the Kelvin time. I like J.J. Abrams' Trek. I have no problem with it. The only thing I don't care for is Discovery.
As long as you don't start doing the whole "if you like the show, you're not a real fan" thing, we're all good.
You know what? I think that there is a place for any of it. It's people. I sometimes will talk with people that say, "Oh, I hated Star Trek Enterprise." You know what? I liked it. It was Star Trek. It had Star Trek at the beginning of it. It I don't think there's a problem with any of the Star Trek.
Right.
Even Discovery. I mean, some people are into it. Great. Just because, you're into it doesn't necessarily mean that I have to be into it.
Mm-hmm.
And just because I'm into something doesn't mean you have to.
Okay, I do have
Not that I
one
can think of.
follow-up. I do have one follow-up question because, I mean, your name, Bill Boxler. Do you have a famous uncle and or cousin, or because that name, it just seems familiar to me, like has been involved in some kind of high-end production for TV or movie?
Not that I'll ever admit to.
Okay.
Bruce Boxleitner, he changed his name.
Okay.
It was Boxler. He wasn't good enough for us.
Oh, he lost weight, so he changed to Boxleitner.
Yes, there you go.
Alrighty, well, I guess that's all the time we have for today. Thank you very much to our guest host, Bill Boxler,
Well, thank you.
who will be appearing soon, eventually, in Call to Unity.
Whenever Adam wants to release it.
I think Adam's having more fun just having people on who cannot answer questions, so I don't know if he ever will. Coming soon to a computer near you. In a world where they went with audio instead of video, one fan film will change everything.
Because it's not a film.
That's right. All right, well, thank you very much for listening. Thank you to Adam. Thank you to Bill Boxler. And I'm going to thank myself because that's just the kind of guy I am. Well, like and follow us on Facebook. We are available for download in the iTunes Store. We are also on YouTube. Check out TrekSphere.com for links to this show and various blogs, articles, and news tidbits related to Star Trek and Star Trek fan films. And join us next week as once again we look at the strange questions that can only be answered in the Twilight Zone.